Well, we are your local morning show, so we've tried this morning to bring you more of a local perspective to the passing of Michael Jackson.
And Steve Keeley's been telling us about great stories about when he showed up at the opening of the Taj Mahal, and Steve continues that story now for us.
You made something work here.
Hey, on my lap, this is Scott Cummings to my left, but let's go to my lap first, because I'm going to show you the famous faces from 1993's Cosmopolitan magazine. And you see Michael Jackson here with the red shirt, and to his left, that is Scott Cummings, a bodyguard for Michael Jackson during his time here in Atlantic City. And Scott, nice enough to come into the studio right now and share some of his stories with his life with Michael Jackson down in Atlantic City. You bodyguard to the stars. You worked for Donald Trump for years. He was almost your best man in your wedding, showing up at your wedding down in Stone Harbor. Talk about that time with Michael Jackson. We've shown that video a lot. It was a crazy time. I remember wherever Michael went, people found out it was Michael, and it was a mob scene. And you probably had one of your toughest jobs guarding anybody then.
It was actually, Steve, one of the most challenging details that we've ever had, bringing Michael through the crowd. As you can see, Bobby Flipping there was an ACPD guy, and we're trying to bring him through this crowd. It was almost impossible. It was very, very rough. People were trying to sneak under the ropes to get a piece of him, and he didn't really travel with any security. He was very, very quiet, very meek and mild young man, and he was very, very difficult to protect because he was so tiny. And as we went through the crowd, the only way to control him was to grab him by the back of the belt and actually lift him where you wanted him to go if the crowd kind of swayed back and forth.
Over the years, we learned what kind of a crazy shopper he was, and the funny part was that the easiest time to protect him was when he was out shopping in the little souvenir shops, the little pawn shops in Atlantic City, when everybody thought he was a Michael Jackson imposter and nobody bothered him.
Well, there was a few people that ran into him on the boardwalk, one of these little antique stores, and he's looking at things, and people say, "Hey, look, that's Michael Jackson, an impersonator." And it was a lot easier for us to, to move him in and out when people thought he was an imposter, and they would ask us, and we would just say, "Yeah, he's an imposter." It's a lot easier for us.
And my favorite story about that is Donald Trump, always a guy having to show off everything. I remember being at a couple of his openings, and he had a lot of cash all the time around. And talk about the time he asked Michael Jackson, "Hey, did you ever see $1 million in cash?"
Oh, Mr. Trump was always a gentleman, always treated us with the utmost respect. And at one point he said to Michael, "Do you ever see $1 million in cash?" And Michael said, "Well, no, Mr. Trump." He said, "Come on, follow me." And here he walked right into the vault and opened up a drawer and, picked it up and handed it to Michael, and it was pretty fun.
It was like a kid in the sandbox, because he didn't just look at it. He started playing with the money, didn't he?
I don't think he's ever seen that much cash. I really don't. I don't believe $1 million in cash, but people, think they're not really sure how much $1 million looks like. So he was pretty dumbfounded.
Now, Michael Jackson spent a lot of time in Atlantic City for the Taj Mahal opening and everything. How on edge were you the whole time you're in charge of guarding the biggest star in the biggest star in the world's life at that point?
Well, Mr. Trump at that point just said to me, make sure nothing happens to him. Give him whatever he wants, take good care of him, because, Donald was more or less responsible for his visit there in Atlantic City. But I have to tell you, some kids from the neighborhood came up, and that's when everything went south. They were running underneath the ropes. They were disregarding police orders. They were disregarding us at our point, and you could see at some point they go to try to take Michael Jackson's hat. Well, at one point they were very, very successful. They actually got the hat, and Michael turned to me tearfully eyed and said, "Hey, this is where he ducked down," and I had him by the belt, and he ducked down and said, "Please get my hat." He was very, very upset at that point.
Yeah, don't worry about me getting my hat. And a trooper got the hat, and you made his day.
The trooper got the hat, yes, and he was very, very excited, and he was like a kid again.
All right, Scott Cummings, always great to talk to you, and lived with Henry Kissinger for 3 years, John and Chanel, and he's got some great stories about Henry Kissinger. There's a great book inside this guy, and we'll all get to read it someday, I'm sure.
We appreciate him sharing those stories. Thank you, Steve.